Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Archana Solanki. Here are the headlines we're tracking this evening. Indian and Pakistani forces exchange fire briefly at the line of control as tensions rise after the Pahalgam terror attack. Indian Army sources say Pakistan initiated the firing. Army Chief General Upendra Dwivedi is in Srinagar as the United Nations calls for maximum restraint. Sensex and Nifty gained 1% this week despite a sell-off on Thursday and Friday. Nifty manages to hold above 24,000. Mid-cap index up 2% this week. Maruti Suzuki misses estimates in Q4. Profits down over 4%. Revenue growth is below expectations. Margins contract by 180 basis points annually. China denies any trade negotiation with the US once again. This after President Trump claims officials from both nations have been meeting each other. China tells US to abolish the tariffs if it wants a resolution to the tussle. Apple is seeking to import most of the iPhones it sells in the United States from India by the end of 2026. Sources say the company is aiming to accelerate the shift beyond China to mitigate the tariffs. Google's parent company Alphabet reports quarterly revenue of $90 billion and profit of $30 billion, beating street estimates. Chip maker Intel reports a quarterly loss and cuts growth outlook along with a warning on potential layoffs. Indian electric vehicle makers face a challenge as China restricts the supply of rare earth magnets which are critical for production. Beijing is now demanding end-user certificates signed by officials from India and China before authorizing imports. A day after Bharti Airtel sought conversion of spectrum dues to equity, government sources say such a conversion is not automatic. The telecom department is open to considering the request, but it's subject to evaluations. President Draupadi Murmu will be attending the state funeral of Pope Francis tomorrow. World leaders, including US President Trump and heads of state from Europe, will be in attendance. The top story today, India and Pakistan's relationship has hit a new rock bottom. Days after the terrorists attacked tourists at Jammu and Kashmir's Pahalgam, killing 26 people and leaving 17 injured. The police claims that 2 of the 3 suspects are Pakistani citizens. Islamabad, on its part, has denied any link. Indian and Pakistani forces exchanged fire briefly at the line of control last night. Indian Army sources said that Pakistan violated ceasefire near Nogam village of Jammu and Kashmir. Army Chief General Upendra Dwivedi is in J&K to review the security situation. He held meetings with LG Manoj Sinha and top army officials. The Army Chief has directed all officials in Jammu and Kashmir to remain on high alert. The United Nations has urged India and Pakistan to practice maximum restraint. A spokesperson for the agency said that issues between the nations should be resolved through meaningful mutual engagement. India has already unleashed a set of measures against Islamabad. All visas to Pakistani nationals have been cancelled. The Atari border, the only permitted trade route with Pakistan, has been sealed. The Indus Waters Treaty has been suspended as well. India has formally notified Islamabad about its action. A letter from the Union Water Resource Ministry said that sustained cross-border terrorism by Pakistan targeting Jammu and Kashmir impedes India's rights under the treaty. Pakistan too has retaliated with a set of measures, including closing its airspace to Indian airline companies. The Pakistan government also summoned the Indian envoy in Islamabad. Arunima reports from Pahalgam on the security situation in J&K.
The constant whirring of the chopper is the only reminder of the kind of bloodbath that this place, the meadow of Baisaran, has seen just 4 days ago. And suddenly all that is remaining of this picturesque trek is raw beauty, air surveillance, penetrating radars looking at these pine forests to see if the terrorists are still hiding somewhere, a combing operation. People from CRPF are soldiers from Rashtriya Rifles, Jammu and Kashmir Police, CRPF, constantly scouting these pine forests, not just in these high altitude areas of Pahalgam, but also on the other side, in the Jammu division, in Doda, in Kishtwar, in Kathua. They're keeping an eye at the foothills of Anantnag. Next door, Shopian, at least 2 local terrorists have been identified. Their antecedents have been checked. Their residences in Tral and Bijbehara have been blown off in an explosion. So in terms of security, This entire area is now a very, very high security zone. Like I said, just a few days ago, this was a picturesque picnic location. But little did these tourists know that what they were thinking to be a memorable holiday will soon turn into a nightmare.
Ministers Amit Shah and Rajnath Singh briefed lawmakers on Pahalgam at an all-party meeting yesterday. Opposition parties condemned the attack and gave the government full support to take any action that is likely to take. Apart from Shah and Rajnath Singh, top NDA ministers and senior opposition lawmakers, including Rahul Gandhi, Mallikarjun Kharge, Sudeep Bandyopadhyay and Supriya Sule, were present at the meeting.
कश्मीर में शांति रखने के लिए वो अच्छा प्रयास करें और वहाँ पर शांति रखना ज़रूरी है, ये बात उनके सामने हमने रखा और उन्होंने ये कहा कि सभी एक्शन ले लें.
The spirit was good. Security lapses were discussed, but assured the government that all political parties will stand by the government, whatever decisions they can take for the interest of the country.
हम सब की एक ही मांग है, पूरे देश की एक ही मांग है, आतंकवादियों को बर्बाद किया जाए, उनको उसी भाषा में जवाब दिया जाए जैसी दरिंदगी और हैवानियत उन्होंने दिखाई है. मासूम और निहत्थे लोगों की जान उन्होंने ली है.
Congress MP Rahul Gandhi visited the victims of the Pahalgam attack at the Army Hospital in Srinagar today. He had cut short his US visit to return to India after the terror attack. The leader of opposition in Lok Sabha promised healing and solidarity. He's also scheduled to meet various delegations in Kashmir, including the trade and tourism sectors.
We had a meeting yesterday with the government, and the united opposition condemned this action and said that we are there to support whatever action the government wants to take. The idea behind what has happened is to divide society, is to make brother fight brother. And it is very important that every single Indian stands united, stands together, so that we can defeat what the terrorists were trying to do.
The houses of two suspected terrorists involved in the Pahalgam attack was demolished in Jammu and Kashmir. The homes of Asif Sheikh in Pulwama district and Adil Thokar in Anantnag were razed to the ground, apparently using explosives, according to several media outlets in Srinagar. The police have not issued any statement yet on the demolitions. Muslims in Hyderabad and other parts of India wore black armbands to Friday press to protest the attacks on tourists in Pahalgam. Lok Sabha MP Asaduddin Owaisi had issued a call yesterday to all Muslims to wear black armbands as a mark of protest. All right, moving on to the stock market action now. Sensex and Nifty gained 1% this week despite a sell-off on Thursday and Friday. Nifty managed to hold on to the 24,000 mark after a 200-point decline. Sensex lost nearly 600 points. The mid-cap saw sharper cuts today, but the index ended with gains of 2% for the week. Prashant Nair is here with the market wrap.
Well, Friday was nothing to write home about. We finally saw some profit booking. And actually, there were hints of that Thursday as well. I mean, on Thursday, if you remember, the Nifty was up 150 points, and then we ended with 15-point gains. And today, of course, I mean, we started lower, and then we kind of sort of, in the first hour, we were down. And we kind of sold off more, recovered a little bit, but it was down by 330. But for the week, it was the third week of gains, if you look at the full week. So the Nifty this week was up 0.8%, the Bank Nifty was up 0.7%, mid-cap index 1.7%, and the small-cap index was up about 0.8%. Remember, Friday took a bite out of these gains. As of Thursday's close, I mean, these numbers would have been much better. And by the way, in these 3 weeks that we've seen, the low was about 21,740 or something on the Nifty. We are up as of this Friday 10.5%. So it's not small, and many stocks, well-owned stocks, as part of this, for example, the BSE 200 universe are up easy 20-25%, some more. As I said, Friday, of course, weekly gains aside, Friday was the down day. Nifty, Bank Nifty, mid-cap, small-cap indices, everything. I'll go back to the broader sort of gains that we had. and I looked at the BSE 500, NSE 500 universe for this Friday to Friday, actually, what gains did we see? So the big gains actually surprisingly came from the IT sector. Now remember, the IT space has been completely bashed up. And it was not as if numbers which we got this week were anything great to write home about, but it was just sort of, a lot of selling had already happened. And there were some bounces which we saw. Tata Elxsi 14% this week, Coforge up 12, Tech Mahindra 12, Emphasis was up about 12% as well. There were some other names, AU Small Finance Bank 15% pop, Vari was up 15, Newgen was up 13, Apar Industries and Atul were up 13% respectively. Some losses coming through in names like Blue Star, 14% cut this week. There was Syngene, which was down 14, RK Forging and PCBL. Actually, just 4 names with losses in excess of 10% this week. All told, a pretty good week. I mean, I think as we go into the weekend, trade headlines, Trump comments, etc. remain top of mind. But there is, of course, an added element which we will need to keep an eye out on, which, of course, is, the repercussions and how India will react to in response to the absolutely, terrible attacks which took place in Kashmir. If and when we will see that, I think markets are waiting and watching that very closely as well. Back to you.
Right, thank you, Prashant, for that. Moving on, shares of Maruti declined in trade after reporting a weak set of numbers in the fourth quarter, missing street estimates across most parameters. Net profit slipped over 4% and margins contracted by 180 basis points on an annual basis. Sudarshan Kumar joins us with the earnings snapshot. Sudarshan.
So it's a mixed set of earnings from Maruti as far as profit and revenue are concerned. Those numbers have come slightly below estimates, but margin has come in at 10.5% against our expectation of 12%. And company has given reasons, and because of expenses have increased, and 3 parts of expenses, if I can talk. First one is material cost. It has risen both sequentially and year-on-year. It was up 6% sequentially, 1% year-on-year. Employee expenses were up 15% year-on-year and 2% sequentially, and other expenses have increased 14% year-on-year and 13% sequentially. So if you accumulate all these have impacted margin by 230 basis points. Now, material cost impact on margin was by 90 basis points, employee cost impacted by 30 basis points, and other expenses impact were of 110 basis points. So what all company has included in other expenses? It has mentioned first, new plant-related expenses, second, higher sales promotion or ad expenses, and third, higher manufacturing overhead expenses. So these have come in other expenses, and that has impacted margin by 110 basis points. But what was the positive in the earnings was the realization. It has improved both sequentially and year-on-year because of the price hike that company has taken, not only in Q4, but even in Q1 FY26 also it had announced price hike. But just if we talk about Q4, they had taken price hike twice, and that had impacted positively to realization, which has improved 7% year-on-year and 3% sequentially. Now, in the commentary, what exactly we'll be looking for? First, what company says on outlook, demand outlook, because recently they had attended one conference in which all the companies, including Hyundai, M&M and Maruti, were saying that in FY26 also PV demand growth is likely to be in low single digit. So we'll have to see if there is any update on that and what exactly company says on commodity outlook going forward.
All right, thank you, Sudarshan, for that. China has once again denied having trade negotiations with the United States. This statement comes after President Donald Trump indicated that officials from both nations have been meeting each other. The Chinese government has told the US that if the Trump administration wants to have trade negotiations, they will have to remove the tariffs. Remember, Trump had softened his stance on imposing massive duties on Chinese imports last week. He said, and I quote, "Tariffs will come down substantially, but it won't be zero." End quotes.
Well, they had a meeting this morning, so I can't tell you. It doesn't matter who they is. We may reveal it later, but they had meetings this morning, and we've been meeting with China.
Tech giant Apple is considering India as one of its manufacturing hubs for all iPhones for the US market. Sources have told CNBC TV18 that the production shift could be done as early as 2026. However, this decision could be subject to India's ability to scale up production rapidly and the US and China trade relations. Parikshit Luthra is standing by with the details. Parikshit, what will this mean for India?
Apple is considering making India a hub to manufacture all Apple phones for the US market by next year. This is because of US-China trade tensions and the high tariffs on China imposed by the Trump administration. But Apple's decision will also depend on adequate capacity ramp-up in India and the trajectory of the US-China trade talks. The company is considering increasing production to 40 million phones in India in 2025. Production last year was around 26 million phones. Apple contract manufacturers in India are ramping up capacity in existing facilities. Foxconn's Bengaluru plant is likely to be operational within this month and will have a capacity to manufacture 20 million phones at peak capacity. So while there is an intent to make all Apple phones in India, a lot will depend on whether US and China can reach a deal. Apple did not reply to CNBC TV18 queries.
Parikshit, please stay on with us. Let's also talk about China's restrictions on supply of rare earth magnets that have worried Indian EV makers. The magnets are a critical component used in the production of electric cars and two-wheelers. What can you tell us on that front?
Indian EV and component makers are facing production challenges as China restricts supply of rare earth magnets, say sources. Automobile and component makers have approached the Indian government for help. CNBC TV18 has learned that China has restricted supply of rare earth magnets to India from the 4th of April onwards. The magnets will be supplied only to those companies which submit end-user certificates in a prescribed format. The Chinese government is demanding end-user certificates releasing any exports of rare earth magnets and also are demanding that they be duly authorized. China says importers must get end-user certificates signed by both the Indian Foreign Ministry and Chinese Embassy. And importers must confirm that the rare earth magnets will not be used for making weapons or given to any third party. Clearly, the Indian auto industry will be impacted. Rare earth magnets are a critical part of traction motors and other components of electric vehicles and automobiles. For the moment, there is inventory, but if these restrictions continue, then there could be production challenges in the coming few months.
Right, thank you, Parikshit, for that. The United States may relax curbs restricting the number of graphics processing units that India can import from the country. Sources tell CNBC TV18 that talks are underway between the two nations to ease the cap of 50,000 GPUs imposed during President Joe Biden's tenure. This could help India's AI mission, under which the government is looking to raise GPU availability to over 33,000. 31% of Indians have used generative AI tools. This, according to a study by Google in collaboration with Kantar India, which reveals that 60% of Indians are unaware of the technology. The study also found that 84% of respondents who have used generative AI use it for assistance with homeworks and daily chores. Speaking with CNBC TV18, Google DeepMind Senior Director Manish Gupta said that the tech major is focused on streamlining its AI offerings into a more user-friendly experience.
Amazing country with so much of potential. And I think when it comes to really developing deep tech capability, we are already beginning to see glimpses of, again, tremendous advances, the Indian developers playing a very key role in developing all of these solutions based on AI for the entire world. In terms of innovation, I think there's potential, right, for us to take it to a far higher level. And it's, again, very heartening to see the government in terms of making real investments in encouraging the startup ecosystem, supporting deep tech startups in India. I think likewise we need to see industry investing more in research.
All right, it's time for a short break. Coming up next, a day after Bharti Airtel sought conversion of spectrum dues to equity, government sources say such a conversion is not automatic. That and more when we return. Welcome back. You're watching Business 360. A day after Bharti Airtel sought conversion of spectrum dues to equity, government sources said such a conversion is not automatic. Ashmit Kumar joins us now. Ashmit, tell us more about the government's stance on the matter.
Well, important clarification coming in. We spoke to various government officials. What they're telling us in very clear terms is that as far as the application process is concerned for this equity conversion, this conversion will not happen under an automatic route. So just because a company has made an application does not mean that automatically that spectrum due or that AGR dues gets converted to government equity. What the government officials are telling us is that there is a process, that there is a certain amount of discretion that the government will exercise in terms of converting these spectrum dues to equity. In fact, there will be application of mine and a decision will be made on a case-to-case basis is what various government officials are telling us. So essentially clarifying, it's not an automatic transition that takes place. What government officials also tell us is that companies, of course, are free to apply under this scheme, under the 2021 cabinet scheme, and that the government will take, the government is not bound to make that transition, but that the government will take an informed decision and will exercise discretion on this conversion. Another key clarification that has come in from government officials is that both AGR dues as well as spectrum dues will be eligible for conversion under this equity conversion scheme. And that, of course, is where we need to bring in the context. So far, the only equity conversion that we've seen so far is in the case of Vodafone Idea. What government officials have previously told us is that now the fresh applicant is Bharti Airtel. Bharti Airtel is also seeking parity with Vodafone Idea, is seeking similar treatment with Vodafone Idea, and therefore is seeking this conversion. And just to set the context, in 2021 is when this cabinet relief had been allowed, had been granted the nod. And under this 2021 scheme, at least as per the language that was used back in 2021, it was eligible. Only spectrum dues that were for spectrum that was bought before 2021 is something that was eligible for this equity conversion. So clarifications coming in from highly placed officials within the DOT. Back to you.
Thank you, Ashmit, for that. In international earnings now, Google parent Alphabet reported a strong set of numbers in the first quarter, surpassing street estimates on most parameters. Revenue surpassed the 90 billion mark, jumping 12% on an annual basis. The company's search and advertising units also showed growth despite competition in the AI space. Overall, advertising brought in over $67 billion, growing 8.5% from the year before. Net income increased by 46%. Intel's first quarter performance surpassed analysts' expectations as well. However, the chip maker's guidance for the current quarter disappointed the markets. Intel said it will break even with revenue of $11.8 billion. It added that its second quarter guidance reflected elevated uncertainty driven by the macro environment. The company said that it plans to slash operational and capital expenses in 2025. These include an unspecified number of layoffs announced by the CEO today. US President Donald Trump has said that Russia has made a big concession to end war in Ukraine by not taking the whole country. Speaking to reporters at the White House, he said he believes both Russia and Ukraine want peace. He added that he has his own deadline for ending the war, but maintained that Washington's attitude could change if an agreement fails to materialize by then.
We're putting a lot of pressure on Russia. And Russia knows that, and some people that are close to it know, or he wouldn't be talking right now. The Prime Minister understands that better than anybody. He wouldn't be talking right now. He's talking, and we're putting a lot of pressure. I think he wants to make a deal. We're going to find out very soon, but it takes two to tango. And you have to have Ukraine want to make a deal, too. And they're being hit very hard, and I do believe they want to make a deal. Stopping the war, stopping taking the whole country. Pretty big concession.
A senior Russian military officer was reportedly killed when a car bomb exploded as he walked past in a city near Moscow. Authorities have said that the improvised explosive device was packed with shrapnel and a gas cylinder inside the vehicle fueled the blast. The car was outside a residential unit. Israeli forces have killed more than 60 people in Gaza in the last 24 hours. The Palestinian Civil Defense Branch has said that 12 people from the same family in North Gaza were among those killed in the early morning airstrikes. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry has reported that nearly 2,000 people have been killed since Israel pulled out of its ceasefire agreement with Hamas on the 18th of March. President Draupadi Murmu has left for Vatican City to attend Pope Francis's state funeral. She is accompanied by Minority Affairs Minister Kiren Rijiju, his deputy George Kurian, and Goa's Deputy Speaker Joshua Peter. D'Souza are also part of the delegation. US President Donald Trump and Ukraine's Zelensky are among the prominent dignitaries who will attend the pontiff's funeral tomorrow. The government has notified rules and procedures for filing appeals at the GST appellate tribunals. Timsi Jaipuria joins us now with the details. Timsi, take us through the government's guidelines.
In a major move to streamline tax litigation, the government has notified the operational framework for the long-awaited GST appellate tribunals. Effective from 24th of April, the new rules mandate digital-only filing of appeals and applications, paving way for a new era of electronic governance in tax adjudication. Under the framework, all appeals, applications and supporting documents must be through the official GST-AT portal. The system will also handle electronic service of notices, case tracking and order issuance. The digital transition is expected to significantly reduce manual errors, delays and the burden of physical paperwork. What is also seen with this notification is a major relief in GST dispute resolution mechanism. The notified rules are structured in 15 chapters, detailing the procedures from admission of appeals to conduct of hearings, electronic filing and disposal of cases in a time-bound manner. Rules provide for e-filing and hybrid hearings, which is likely to bring in uniformity, reduce litigation timelines and ensure faster resolution. With this, industry can now start filing appeals from today itself. Urgent matters will be given priority and tribunals, if needed, can impose costs for defaults or litigation expenses, including penalties for misuse of the process. To be seen now is how actually the functioning of tribunals across the country is able to be a key change maker to reduce GST litigation.
Right, thank you, Timsi, for that. With that, it's a wrap of this edition of Business 360 News and Updates. Continue right here on CNBC TV 18.